Hey everybody, this is Ray Flick, television beat writer for Bleeding Cool, welcoming you back once again to our weekly recap review of Freeform Siren. We're taking a look at the 7th episode for the first season, Dead in the Water. Wow, a lot happened in this episode, and again, one of the things I know I've been emphasizing throughout the season is I like the representation of mermaids. It's not your typical Disney splash type representation, cutesy nice and all beautiful. And wow, do they push that even further in this episode. So I'm going to be getting that to the minute, but again, I'm going to have my, as you can tell as I glance to the side every now and then, I have my cheat sheet ready for you guys. Also some observations along the way, so let's get started. As you know where we left off last episode, Ryn is going to the police station, which means she's going to be in the hands of Sheriff Bishop. So we know it's only going to be a matter of time before, guess who's going to get involved? The sheriff's daughter, Maddie. And I'm sure Maddie's going to have a lot of stuff to answer for. But while that's going on, we've got Xander, Chris, and Calvin, who are making their way out into the water. Now, Xander, we know, because of the whole thing going on with Donna, why he wants to go out there. Chris isn't so interested in mixing it up with the military. Calvin's just like, this whole thing going looking for mermaids isn't really a great idea. Ben isn't too thrilled with the idea of them going out there either, but his feeling is, hey, if they're going to go out anyway, maybe I can offer to help, and in the process, I can use this to my advantage to try and see if I can stop the government from trolling the mermaids, which, again, not bad thinking on his part. Maybe something he might want to tell his friends about, which I think would be great. But again, not a really bad idea. We then cut to Sheriff Bishop and Ryn, and it's Ryn's biggest problem, I think, is the fact that a combination of confused and too honest. Right now, the sheriff's just looking here going, there's just no way you could have done this to this guy. It reminds me of Valerie Solanas. I know it's going to sound like a weird comparison, but it reminds me of the American Horror Story cult season where Valerie Solanas we were finding out her story, and she was played by Lena Dunham. And she was going to the police station. The police station just wouldn't believe her because they just didn't believe her because she was a woman, and there's no way a woman could do that, playing into the sexism, especially at the time. I got that kind of vibe here because the sheriff's looking at Ryn and not being, visually the biggest at what the sheriff thinks human being in the world. There's just no way that her size could have done that kind of damage to the body they found. So we already see that going on. And then Ryn makes a matter of mentioning Maddie and Ben, and of course we're thinking now, oh, okay, well now things just got a lot more interesting and things just got a lot deeper for Maddie. We cut to Decker, wondering what our resident scientist who's walking that moral fine line has been doing. He's in a hotel room and developing a long obsession with Donna's song. We hear him just playing the song over and over again, and we see a level of connection that's developing. Donna's developing a little of a connection with a lot of people. So far now it looks like Decker, we've got Chris, I'm pretty sure there's some kind of impression that's set up for Xander now too, so very interesting to see where this is going to go. But in the short term, we're going to cut back to Maddie. Maddie has been helping on the shore with the coordinates to try to help Ben with his plan to stop the trolling. That is until she gets word that, hey, guess what? Your dad, the sheriff, is sending for you because there's some questions you really need to answer, which is understandable considering the whole Ryn situation. We go back to the boat now. We've got Calvin and Chris. They're a little hesitant about what Ben's real plans are. Xander just doesn't seem to see anything wrong or anything like that, of course, because Xander also seems to be a little preoccupied with his own thing going on. Where it gets very interesting is that all of a sudden, waking up from the bottom of the boat is Xander's dad, Sean, and to say Dad is righteously pissed about his boat being taken out would be an understatement. However, thankfully, we have reasoned-minded Ben there, who, again, to serve his own purposes, convinces Sean to, hey, let's stay the course, let's go out there, because the government's been screwing with all of Bristol Cove, all of us are in play, and we need to try and stop this or get to the bottom of it. Which I'm sure, as you can tell, is probably going to be a really great decision. If you haven't noticed, I'm just dripping with sarcasm when I say that. Interesting enough, they end up going to their proper coordinates, and not only do they find the government in the form of the Cortez. Not only do they find the Cortez, they literally run into the Cortez. Now, what's really creepy about it is that the Cortez is all dark and quiet, not the kind of thing you expect from a government boat of that type doing the kind of work that it's doing. And interestingly enough, we get a confirmation because Admiral Harrison contacts Decker, who we now see is taking a little bit of break from his Donna song overdose, to say, hey, guess what? We haven't heard anything from the Cortez. Now, probability is this is not some kind of like surprise party type setup. Clearly something happened at the Cortez. And what was that? Well, Ben, Calvin, Chris, Xander, Sean, Sleepy, Happy, Dopey. It seems like, wow, we've 90 people now going onto this boat. But they're going onto the boat, and what do they find? Just what you would expect. Blood, and there's a spear weapon stuck into the boat, and they're hearing sounds in the water, and none of this is boding well. And Ben realizes, you know what? Now may not be a good time for us to be in the water, which would be great if you were on shore, or maybe 2 feet away from shore. When you're out this deep, yeah, you're gonna start running into some problems. Let's hold on that. Let's cut to Sheriff Bishop and Maddie. Maddie, talking to Dad/Sheriff, is trying her best to give Dad an answer without bringing up the whole mermaid thing, which at this point goes about as well as you would think. She does, however, get a chance to interact with Ryn, and Ryn kind of gets Maddie up to date on this whole idea of like, look, Donna's out there to take care of the bad men on the water. Translation, anybody out in the water who's not a mermaid. Essentially, you're going to be taken care of because, again, Donna hasn't had a really good interaction with human beings, so we kind of understand. It's still bloody and violent, but we kind of understand. So Maddie realizes at this point, we've got to do something. So she puts her faith in her family's faith, religion, and lore, which we discussed in one of the first episodes. And she shows her dad what Ryn really is by pouring water onto her skin, and her father gets to see the change, and he realizes and he believes in what his daughter is having to say, which I think he also realizes isn't easy for Maddie, because Maddie's straddling this line between essentially believing the fantasy and the supernatural and still being a marine biologist and believing in science. So her father/sheriff releases Ryn into Maddie's custody, so Ryn's actually in really good, safe company as Maddie takes her back, which is great for that. Think of that as kind of foreboding, though, for what's going to happen next episode, because I haven't really gotten to the heart of what happens, because we now need to cut back to the Cortez/Xander/Sean's boat, that whole mix-up that's going on. The engine's shot. So Xander and Sean are basically trying to get that engine to get going, and then all of a sudden we've got spears flying everywhere. And if the spears weren't big enough, ladies and gentlemen, we got a merman. That's right, we got a merman, and this is not some long flowing locks merman or something from a Harlequin romance cover. This is something that will shred and tear you apart, as we so readily see. It takes literally a shotgun blast to be able to take this thing down. Now, a bunch of stuff goes on at this point. We've got Ben and Xander who are able to trick the merman into a containment area, which unfortunately doesn't last long. Chris gets caught up in the whole song of Donna and starts making his way over to her. Thankfully, Calvin uses a flare gun to kind of get that stuff all taken care of, and they chase her away. Remember I mentioned the whole thing about the merman and the containment and getting loose and everything? Yeah, he gets loose, and in the process, before he escapes, kills Xander's dad, Sean. So we have one of our first major casualties, major plot-changing casualties of the episode, essentially killing him before sliding back off into the water. And now we are essentially left with Xander, Ben, Chris, and Calvin, who have to make the hard decision to essentially hide the death, because they can't say what really happened. So we have them going into the episode, and really harshly tragic, especially for a son to deal with, to have to go to shore and lie about his own father's death and say that he was lost at sea. That's where we ended up. Wow, yeah, if there was any confusion about there being a big government/mermaid throwdown that's going to be happening at Bristol Cove, I think this pretty much confirmed it this episode. A lot of action, a lot of momentum. Very curious to see where things go as we segue into the 8th episode, which is Being Human. And from some of the previews, it looks like we will be dealing with the ramifications of Xander's father's death, even if we're not going to be getting to the full truth of it. So, again, excellent run this season so far. The episodes have meaning. This one especially moved a lot of the main mythology forward. I'm curious to see. I think we're going to be getting some more of the additional characters next week. But really strong episode. The presence of the merman was, I thought, a welcome addition. And again, I love where this is going. My hope is, if they haven't announced it yet, that it's going to be getting a second season renewal, which from what I understand probably will, because I know it's doing well. But just a great job across the board. I'm enjoying this series. Again, I've told you already, it's past the 6 episode mark. We're 7 episodes in, and I still give it 2 major thumbs up. Really, really enjoying this series. It is a pleasant surprise, and props to Freeform for the job they're doing. So, once again, folks, this guy right here, Ray Flick Television Beat Writer for Bleeding Cool. thanking you guys for joining me for these recaps, not just this, but for the other ones that I do too. And also, I can't urge you enough to please make sure you're checking out bleedingcool.com for all of our wonderful coverage of television, film, comic books, collectibles, video games, for anything and everything under the pop culture sun. Make sure you check us out at bleedingcool.com. Thank you guys. It is Friday, so enjoy the beginning of your weekend. Don't forget, tomorrow is free comic book day, so make sure you're scarfing up all your free comic books. Again, Ray Flook, thanks for joining me. I'll see you guys in the inner tube. Take care.